This section heading is called SSH. So now within the required software section, we're going to see that we have one more thing to satisfy. So on number 2 here, it's specifying that we should have installed SSH client and also SSH server. So both of these components are needed within our Hadoop cluster. And the reason for that is because when we install Hadoop, it's going to come with a bunch of scripts. And some of these scripts are going to communicate via SSH, so that's why it's required. So now coming over to the terminal. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to ensure that both the client and server component are installed on the system. If they're not installed, then we're going to install them. So we can check to see if the client component is installed by executing the SSH command and not completing the command syntax. Now, based on the output, we can tell that the client component is installed. And the way that we know is because it understood the command. It also understood that we didn't complete the command syntax, and what it did in response is it gave us a general usage for the command. So now we're going to use the SSH command to check to see if the server component is installed. Now the reason for this message in this instance right here is because the server component is not installed on the system by default. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to install it. So sudo apt-get, we're going to install the file from the local repository on this system, and then the package that we're going to install is called OpenSSH-server. So now that we have both components installed, here's what we're going to do next. So we said that when we execute these scripts, they're going to communicate via SSH. Now when executing these scripts, they can communicate with any number of nodes, and we do not want to have to interact with SSH each and every time that we are communicating with those nodes. For example, host key checking and passwords. In this section right here, we're going to explore host key checking, and we're going to look to essentially make that part of it non-interactive by ensuring that the SSH servers that we're going to communicate with, that their public key is stored within the known host file. So first, before we actually go into that, let's first take a look within our home directory and verify the absence of something. So within there, what we're not seeing is a .ssh directory. So both the client and server component to SSH are going to store files within that directory by default. So now if we SSH to localhost, the minute we execute this command, it's automatically going to create that directory. So SSH to localhost. So it automatically created the .ssh directory, and now what we're presented with is host key checking. So what this is right here is it's used by the SSH clients to verify the identity of the SSH servers that they're connecting to. Now when you first communicate with an SSH server, you're going to have to verify its identity by confirming the hash of its public key. So once you do this the first time, we don't have to do it any subsequent times. So we're just going to do it here the first time. And as I said, now when we reestablish a session using SSH from the client to the server, we no longer have to interact with that component of it. So now we're just going to complete establishing a session, and then we'll terminate the session. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to verify that that key now resides within a file that's called known hosts. So we're going to cat.ssh and then known hosts. So here you can see the SSH server's public key.